Harry Hoxsey is another example of a man who was treating and curing cancer naturally that was heavily persecuted. Now, this is a story that is near and dear to my heart because in 1996, when my father, Graham Bollinger, was diagnosed with stomach cancer, we were doing everything that we possibly could to take him to what's called the Hoxsey Clinic in Tijuana, Mexico. Unfortunately, Dad died before we could get him to the Hoxsey Clinic, which is now called the BioMedical Center. That's why it was so exciting to me and the Truth About Cancer team to travel to Tijuana, Mexico and visit the BioMedical Center to learn more about Harry Hoxsey's treatment, which is still being used there. It's called the Hoxsey Tonic, and the rest of that protocol. Another exciting thing for me personally was to be able to meet Liz Jonas. Now, Liz Jonas is the sister of Mildred Nelson, and Mildred Nelson was Harry Hoxsey's chief nurse.
I'm Liz Jonas, and my sister was Mildred Nelson. I have no medical background. Mine is business. Mildred was the medical one in our family. My mom had cancer, ovarian and uterus, and they had planted radiation in her body and burned her very bad and then told her to go home and die. My dad heard about Harry Hoxsey, who was in Dallas, Texas, and we lived in Jacksboro, which is about 90 miles. So my dad called my sister. She was the oldest in our family. There were 7 of us. And asked her to come drive for him. He was an old-timey rancher. And she said, "What are you going to Dallas for?" She said, "To get parts for the tractor." And he said, "No, I'm taking your mother to the doctor." So she came and drove. And through the day, Hoxsey found out she was a nurse and offered her a job. And my dad told him, "No, she doesn't want to work for you. She thinks you're a quack." Okay. He offered for her to go look in all his files, but she didn't. And she couldn't talk my mother and daddy out of this, so she decided to go to work for him to prove he was a quack and to save her mom. Our mom lived to be 99 years old.
What a great story. Liz's sister Mildred Nelson wanted to prove that Harry Hoxsey was a quack, but she ended up becoming his chief nurse, and their mom lived to be 99 years old. Now, the head of the AMA at that time was Morris Fishbein. Now, he was the same man that was the head of the AMA when Royal Raymond Rife was destroyed. And the AMA wanted to buy out the Hoxsey formula. They almost signed the paperwork, but
they got to the point of signing the papers, and he said, "You have to make this available to everybody." And they said, "We may not make it available to anybody. We may not use it even." And he said, "No, then I won't sell it."
So they basically wanted to buy it and bury it.
Bury it, yes.
Harry was arrested numerous times for
numerous.
For what were the charges?
All different kinds, just whatever they came up with, you know. But the patient, sometimes he always carried a roll of bills in his pocket with him, a big roll of bills. And he made his money, in my understanding, in penny stock, all penny stock. But he carried a big roll of bills with him, and sometimes he'd bail himself out, sometimes he'd just stay in jail. The patients would come and bring food, and they would circle the whole block. So they would just let him out to get rid of the patient.
Wow.
You know.
If that's not a testimony to Harry and the treatment, then nothing is. So the patients would surround the jail?
Yes.
Okay.
Surround the jail. Can you imagine?
No, I can't. I mean, not today.
Yeah.
But this was back when? 40s, 50s?
In the 40s.
40s. Okay.
But his patients were very loyal to him because the MAA and FDA, if they would find out they were going to mail medicine to a patient, and they would be standing at the patient's door and take the medicine so the patients couldn't have it. When Mildred moved the clinic to Mexico, he told her, he said, "You have to drop the Hoxsey name." And she said, I can't do that. And he said, "Yeah, you have to. That's what they're after. They're mad at me. They're after me." So that's where the BioMedical came in. But then the patients wouldn't drop it. We're still known as the Hoxsey Clinic. And that's what we're put on this earth for.
It is.
Really. If you really stop and think about it, we're supposed to help each other.
That's right. I have to agree with Liz. I mean, one of the main reasons that we're put here on earth is to help other people. And I commend her and the doctors there at the Hoxsey Clinic, the BioMedical Center, for doing this. And one of the doctors there at the BioMedical Center that we interviewed was Dr. Elias Gutierrez. Here's some of his interview.
And basically what everything spins around, it's what is known as the Hoxsey formula. It's a liquid made with a combination of several herbs and minerals, and it, because of the way that it's put together, it selectively targets only the malignant cells. Any cell with a bad DNA or a bad metabolism, those are the ones that are going to be destroyed. Okay. Of course, there's a few vitamins, there's a diet, which is not a difficult one to follow, and we also use a lot of herbal, both Occidental and Chinese herbal formulas.
The formula that you're using, is this pretty much the same formula that Harry Hoxsey used?
Exactly the same.
80, 100 years ago?
Exactly the same. It was passed down from Hoxsey over to Mildred, and then Mildred brought it into the clinic, and then she passed it on to Liz, she's the owner now, she's Mildred's sister, and we still use basically exactly the same formula as it was being used in Texas.
So if somebody comes into the Hoxsey clinic here and they want treatment, how long does the treatment typically last?
This is a clinic that does something in a different way than most of the regular clinics. We try to do everything on a single day. People come in the morning, they get registered, they go through the laboratory, they go through the x-rays, they get their consultation, a very thorough physical examination, and then we have to wait until we get the reports from laboratory x-rays, which takes a couple of hours, and then we call people up for a second visit in the afternoon, and we explain all the findings to them. We give them their treatments, and they just pick up their supplies and make their payments and go home, same day. Wow. This is something you can do at home. You don't have to be necessarily hospitalized to do it, you know. Mm-hmm. And they stay on the diet, and they come back for a checkup every 6 months, every year. Eventually, just come back every 2-3 years.
Okay. Being a one-day treatment, the Hoxsey treatment, relatively affordable?
I think so. I think we're the cheapest clinic in town.
Are you really?
Oh yeah.
8.5 years ago, back in August of '06, I couldn't lay down. Matter of fact, Zach was with me on a motor car trip on the railroad, and the seat belt started hurting on the way back from the trip. We were in about 300 miles, and the seat belt started feeling tight. And the next week I had another trip, and coming back, the seat belt was also tight. And shortly after that, it couldn't lay down. And went to Mayo Clinic and was diagnosed, and the first time they said I didn't have cancer. And in a 2-week period, they found out I did have cancer pretty bad, and it was in my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had it in the esophagus, the liver, the kidney, the lymph nodes all over under the arm and in the groin. I had a tumor bigger than a volleyball in the stomach, and then in the bone, stage 4. And the doctor gave me 3 days to 3 months, and one doctor says, you know, the last guy we treated like you made it 3 days. So it was not a very good forecast. So the day I found out they had it in the bones, I found out at 2 o'clock up in the 10th floor of the Rochester Mayo Clinic at the Ghana building. Things looked very bleak, but on the way from left to Rochester, for instance, we had to be a flight in Minneapolis at 4 o'clock that day and didn't find out till after 2, and we made the plane by 13 minutes to get down here. And it's just there's no chance of living afterwards. But here it's been 8.5 years later, and they've not had cancer for 8 years and 3 months. They haven't found it. Mayo Clinic couldn't find it. They haven't found it here. There's no cancer that's visible anymore. I started with Mayo Clinic, had 13 doctors at Mayo Clinic, and they gave me the same forecast of 3 days to 3 months. And then I went up to the University of Minnesota, and then the Fairview Hospital and the Masonic Cancer Center. I received a death sentence from 17 doctors, and the 18th one was down here, Dr. Gutierrez, and it was no big deal to him. It was bad, yes, but nothing special. And as far as I know, I was taking more medicine and more tonic than any other patient I've ever talked to so far. I talked to a lot of patients from down here that I've sent down here, and other patients, but I was taking the strongest dose they had, but I never missed a day of work. And so it never affected my ability to do whatever, but it made the total difference in life. And this life is fantastic. I mean, I got a grandson, I got 3 grandsons, but the only one can come with me once in a while. The other 2 are very busy. And this one here gets to come with me. We do a lot of things together, including come down for Jeep rides and stuff. We would have never been able to have that if we wouldn't have been here to get some help. A lot of help. Life is great. Life is great.
What an encouraging story from Dave, who has been cancer-free now for 8 years due to the Hoxsey formula, and who was told by 17 traditional doctors that he had no hope and that even the toxic chemo drugs couldn't save him.